Welcome. If you're here for the replay, I'm about to let everybody in. I'm super jazzed to have you here. Please feel free to listen to this while you're doing the dishes, while you're going for a walk, or sitting in front of a computer. Like, we're here for ease and joy and play, and a business that fucking works. So let's let everybody in. Hello, everybody. How are you all? Oh my God, I love everybody here so much. Hi, Eva. Hi, Jean. Hi, Rochelle and Sunita. Jean and Eva, you don't know each other yet, I don't think, but Jean is one of my clients. Eva is my podcast co-host, and I just feel like you two will love each other. So just letting everybody in. Oh, yeah. Hi, Rochelle. That cute purple top.
Hey. Hi, everybody.
How are we? Hi, Shavite. Oh, thanks, Anita. Thank you. My 4-year-old is like loves fashion, so and she really wanted my attention while I was getting ready. So I was like, great, Birdie, your job is to help me figure out what I'm going to wear. So we can give Birdie credit. Hi, everybody who is on the camera off. Oh, yes. Eat lunch. Yes. Hi, SL. How are you? It's nice to have you here.
Thank you. My name is Salida.
Salida? I'm going to write that
Yes.
down. It's a beautiful name.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I'm super jazzed to have you all here. And if you're watching the replay, I'm super jazzed for that. Where do we want to start? Then we might have some latecomers because it's me and I'm always late, so people are always late. Shannon says I have a big bluey band-aid on my nose. Yes, Mama, I see you. Getting ready for my PT job and listening in maybe on camera tomorrow. Perfect. So this workshop, okay, we got Elsa coming in. So this workshop is going to be today and tomorrow. Today, we're going to look at all the ways in which we are perhaps running our business not from self-love. We're going to look at some of the ways in which self-rejection might be in the driver's seat of our business. And then tomorrow, we're going to look at what running a business, like how to start running your business from self-love. Obviously, it's this overlap, but that's kind of the main bucket of each day. Where I want to start, I want to introduce myself because I think some of you found me on TikTok about 40 minutes ago. And I also want to give everybody a chance to take a moment and really claim why they're here. So I am a really, really big believer in the power of intention, in particular of your intention as you walk into any space. I really strongly believe that as we set our intention, things unfold. And so I really want you to take a moment, and you can put it in the chat box, or you can just jot it down in a notebook. If you don't have a notebook, you might want one. So, feel free to go grab one. What inspired you to say yes to this workshop today? What brought you here in this moment to this workshop? Question number 1. And question number 2, what are you seeking to create? What is it that you would like on the other side? What's the before and after that you're casting for yourself? And if you want to throw those answers in the chat, you're more than welcome to. Can I repeat the first question? Absolutely. So what inspired you to say yes to this today? What's your why for being here? What's your inspiration? Okay, this is really great when people answer this question by complimenting me. Thank you. Hi, Pam. I was hoping you'd be here. Oh, great. So first question, what inspired you to say yes, to sign up for this? And what is it that you're seeking to shift? What is it you're seeking to change? What is it that you are declaring possible on the other side of this workshop? Okay, so okay, everyone's complimenting me. Great, thanks. No edits. Shapevite says getting support to get more in alignment with my spirit and what I create. Eva, to discover what my current resistance to work and also honestly just to be in your magical energy. Thank you. Yeah, guys, if you run workshops, start with this question. You get to start with just a load of compliments. It's great. Highly recommend. Gremlin management. Yes. So for those of you who are new to me, a lot of the cornerstone of my work looks at integrating what I call our monsters or our gremlins, another way of looking at shadow work. And so Jean, who's in one of my programs, is speaking to that here, all of you is welcome, right? So one of the things we're going to talk about today is how we have been taught that parts of ourselves are not invited to the success party, right? Parts of us are not invited to the places where we get to be loved and taken care of and adored and celebrated for our work, and receive for our work, right? So one of the real cornerstones of my work is that here all of you is welcome, and in particular, I'm curious to make space for where you might be carrying the story that parts of you aren't welcome and where you might be leaving them out in the cold. I also want to flag, I really wanted to do this outside because it's beautiful, but if for some reason people start having sound issues, will you just flag it for me? So far, all my neighbors are being quiet, but if suddenly there's issues, flag it for me and we'll pivot. Rochelle says, I'm pivoting career paths and anticipating on opening my own business in the near future. Yes, yes, yes. I'm looking to excavate and learn so I can live happier life with financial freedom. Yes, yes, Rochelle. I friggin' love this for you. And I have seen you cracking that space open for a little while now. So for those of you who might be new to me, my name is Kylie Caldwell. I am a money and business coach, and I am a mystic. And the key things that I am interested in is how, as the name of this workshop implies, how we can build businesses and infrastructures and systems that are rooted in a really, really, really deep, reverent relationship with ourself, and that nurture both ourselves and others, right? Okay, Shavite says I'm freezing a little bit. Is anybody else seeing me freezing up? Okay, all right. So the tools that I use look at shadow work, monster work, gremlins, right? These rejected parts of ourselves. I also am a really big fan of somatic work and emotional alchemy, right? Really deeply feeling our feelings and watch what they transform into. And before I started working for myself, I was in sales for well over a decade. I was a sales director. And so I come to this work with a body of knowledge around strategy and selling and sales skills, and a deep personal path to self-love and greater connection with source. And I'm interested in weaving those two together for us so that our strategies and our actions, again, are rooted in a kind of reverent self-care. Let's see. So, any questions so far? Anything anyone's already got to speak to? Okay. So the other place, oh, thank you, Kristen. Kristen's looking to shift my next career. I'm so jazzed to have you here. Absolutely. Okay, great. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, yeah, and Shavite's the best. So, anyone who loves Shavite loves, I love. Some things that I'm not here for, and I invite you to see where you might be carrying, right? We're all carrying baggage all the time. I'm sure you've had many moments where you're carrying a backpack, emotional backpack, and then all of a sudden you realize you've been carrying it and you realize what's been in it, right? And so these are some of the things that we're going to look at kind of letting go of. So things I am not interested in, and I invite us to all shed. One is hustle culture, burnout culture, a commitment to overwhelm and overwork, right? The idea that if we want to get where we want to go, we have to continually self-sacrifice. We have to continually drive and go and go and go, right? Hard work is the only path. And that hard work has to look like not taking rest, not taking stop, not listening to our own inner rhythms, right? Now, at the same time, I love the delicious feeling of joyful hard work, right? And so this is not necessarily suggesting that we don't get to work, but that we want our work to be joyful and nourishing and take good care of us, even as it is moving us forward. Okay. Hello, Devante. How are you? Oh, I'm so glad you're here. So just to catch you up, if you want to drop in the comments, we were setting intention of kind of what brought us here and what we are seeking to create for ourselves in this workshop today and tomorrow. So we're not here for hustle culture. And hustle culture, capitalism, these things run deep, and all of these things that I'm declaring, I'm inviting us to let go of, I also invite you to see as a practice, right? I am constantly unlearning ways in which performative based hustle culture, earning love kind of vibes are woven through my DNA and my business practice. So I invite you also to see this as a generous work in progress rather than a thing you must achieve, right? And that is actually one of the very myths, I think, of kind of hustle culture and capitalism, is that there's a place you must arrive at, and wherever you are now is wrong, right? So my first question for you is just to take a moment, take a breath. Where might you see the thread that where you are is wrong and where you need to be is far away? If you are noticing that, is there a thread for you that where you are is wrong and where you need to be is far away? Okay, Rochelle says actually no. So I love that. That is gorgeous, right? And I see Rochelle is in one of my programs called Alchemy, which is really looking at our inner emotional relationship to money. And so I can share, Rochelle, I have watched you really like give your birth yourself more and more permission to be exactly where you are. So I love that as an answer. We're going to come back to this question. So first thing is hustle culture, also capitalist culture, but we can slot in a bunch of different names for it, right? The second question, the second thing that I invite us to leave at the door is the toxic elements of what I call manifestation culture, right? So those of you who are here in some way are, I suspect, spiritual entrepreneurs or personal development interested folk, right? And it's easy as you're building a business with that lens or with that interest to fall prey to a lot of content that's about manifestation culture in a way that is actually a marriage. It's really capitalism culture wearing a mask, right? And what I mean by that is a lot of the pressure of manifestation culture is high vibe only and think the right thoughts, right? So when we have a lens that's telling us that our emotions are wrong, we are in a practice of self-rejection. And when we are given a practice that's telling us to control our thinking, we are telling these tender emotional parts of ourselves that they need to be controlled, right? Now, I suspect, because you're human, that you have had experiences in your life where you were hurt or scared or sad or alone, and there was not the appropriate emotional care that you needed in that moment, right? A lot of us have different versions of this as children and also as adults, right? Where we are hurt in some way, we are carrying tender feelings, and the emotional care that we need is not provided, right? We know that this is a cornerstone of how kind of trauma is stored in our bodies. And also we replicate this cycle when we're given tools that say, feel better feelings, right? Because that's exactly what you were perhaps told in this moment. So I invite you perhaps to touch into a moment, if one is rising up, where you felt tender. This does not have to be about your business. It can just be it can be when you're 5 years old. But touch into a moment where you felt tender and you found the emotional care available lacking, right? When we layer on the lens of kind of toxic manifestation culture, we reinforce that experience for ourselves because these tender emotions show up: grief, resentment, fear, pain, and we tell them to go away. We tell them to be better or different or an other. And that is an act of re-traumatizing ourselves. That is an act of really deep-seated cruelty to ourselves that we've been taught from all sorts of different angles, right? So again, compassion, if you're falling prey to this, just last night I was talking to Eva and she was walking me through unhooking from some of this, right? And so there can be kindness if you notice this pattern. And also, let's start noticing this pattern and let's get rid of this idea that we have to be a certain kind of emotional state in order to be taken care of, that only the happy, grateful, joyful, perfect part of ourselves is worthy of care and love. And let's start inviting in a story that in your mess, in your grief, in your rage, you are also equally worthy of love. There is no difference. There is nothing to distinguish between the two, right? I'm reading some people's comments. Rochelle says, when I had big emotions as a child and my caregivers couldn't handle them, they went away, which told me until I acted more palatable, only then I get support. Absolutely. Yes, this is such a common thing, right? Especially for really sensitive, but if you walked into the world really sensitive, which I think is often the kind of folks who end up on a spiritual seeker's path, often want to build businesses that change the world, right? Can you hear the kids next door screaming? That's great timing. Can we just, I don't know, maybe Zoom filtered it out, but like as I'm speaking to the way in which we carry our too muchness story from our emotional bigness as children, and then the kids next door started screaming. So thanks, pals. Hello, Elizabeth. Welcome. We're well, you'll jump in, you'll catch up. So in particular, actually, we're talking about the constraints of kind of high vibe culture and how that is actually an act of self-rejection, right? So one of the things I want to, when we're going to do here, kind of lay out a framework, and then we might dive deeper into some of these. But one I want to invite you to look at and kind of take away, for your homework, if you want it, is to look at where this kind of emotional self-rejection might be playing out in your life and or business. Now, I will often say life and or business because the two are in many ways interchangeable, right? How you are running your business and how you are running your life are probably not totally different. If you're an overgiver in your emotional relationships, you probably also feel the pressure to be an overgiver in your business, right? And the beautiful thing about that is that when you tend to this story wherever it is loudest, meaning if you have a friendship where this is showing up hot, it will also shift the way you are experiencing business and vice versa. So I don't want you to feel overwhelmed when I say, oh, it's the same problem everywhere. I want you actually to see that that means one action or one shift gets to create seismic change in all of the places of your life. Does that make sense? I want to pause and see if anyone has questions percolating or just some that kind of like aha that they're buzzing to share. And it's okay if not, but I just want to pause.
Can I just jump in?
Of course, my
love. Well, I did see something about if I don't feel confident, then I don't take action. And I do see that as something that's creeping up. It's like I don't have to have all the ducks in a row to just take the first imperfect step forward.
Oh, well, thanks for the T-ball setup for where I wanted to go next. So thanks a bunch. Yeah. Anyone else relate to that? That the lighting now is changing. Okay. Anyone else relate to that? That there are these moments where you feel ready, and also you feel not ready, right? Or you feel in that like kind of stalled middle ground. Does that relate to anybody? Yeah, Rachel says, my mom always says, do it afraid. Oh, okay. I love that. I want to steal that for my kids. Yeah. Does anyone else actually want to come off of mute and share how that pattern might be showing up for them, or where it might be showing up?
I'll do it.
Yeah, go ahead, Jean. Thank you.
I come from a culture where a lot was asked of me as a small person, not a lot of support, not a lot of instruction, not a lot of bandwidth for helping the peewee along. And now that is harnessed to this giant creative engine that is all ideas. And there's this transition space that I move through where I have to embrace not knowing. It's okay to be on my own. I know how to go get support. Look, I did it today. I needed support. I found it. But there is this chasm between those things, and that person, it's not only that they're alone and need help, but that actually needing the help, not knowing, is a big flaw. And somehow proof, and I've got some mean screenings in my head, but also proof that this was never supposed to happen in the first place. So just like whatever. So there is like a dynamic tension between the two. That's tough.
Thank you. Thank you for, you just always such, it's like bold, beautiful heart. And I know that what you just spoke to is resonant.
Thank you.
I have notes. I'll come back, but I want to actually keep the sharing going. If anyone else wants to speak to the way in which these patterns of perfectionism, stall, the angst around not knowing might be showing up for you. Or just oh yeah, go ahead, Rochelle.
Oh, did somebody just say they have all these creative ideas and then they don't necessarily know how to take them forward?
Yes.
Because that is something that you get so filled with inspiration and hope, and you just know it would be a good thing, and then I can relate to the feeling of getting derailed by the details and not sure about the next steps, and then they start to die, and that is soul crushing.
Yes. Okay. I want to speak to that specifically, that you have these ideas, you kind of fizzle on the action for whatever combination of reasons, and then the ideas start to die. And I would just like to offer something, which is that you are perhaps a fountain of ideas, and you are perhaps infinitely abundant in ideas. And maybe you can give yourself some permission that each idea is birthing you a little bit closer. And also you're not going to run out of ideas. So if there's one, if the idea comes and then something fizzles and you feel, oh no, I lost the moment, you will have another, you already can see, right? You have continued to be a fountain of ideas. And so in the spirit of permission granted, what happens if you're not under so much pressure under each individual idea? And then you can act or not act, which will always make action easier, right? Like again and again and again, when we don't have pressure, we can take bigger strides. And in some ways, the whole gift I want to give us today is like, how can we peel the pressure cooker off so that we can authentically self-express, authentically move in our businesses, show up for ourselves and our clients and our potential clients the way we are hungry to do. And the key is pressure, right? And pressure usually looks like self-rejection, self-loathing, all of these kind of nitty-gritty things that we're giving ourselves here, right? And so one gift I would like to plant, or one question kind of to ask yourself again and again, is where does permission want to live here, right? So in Rochelle's case, maybe permission wants to live in, none of these ideas need to be the idea. And therefore it's okay that I don't take action. And therefore that gives you space to take action. Anyone else feeling caught in the space before action, right? In this kind of like, I get the image of like engine revving kind of mode, right? Kristen, you're nodding head. No pressure. You can tell me to screw off, but do you want to say anything?
Yeah, so much to say. I'm just trying to, all this stuff is just hitting all the points. For me, I don't even know where to start other than I'm definitely in the stuff right before. But I wanted to touch back on what she said about ideas. I'm coming to terms with who I am and that it's okay that, and then how do I help myself is that I am very much the ideas person. I am not the executor. So if I've always been had a support staff or team where I'm the ideas person, I tell them what needs to be done to execute. Now I'm wanting to do something for myself and I have all these fabulous ideas, but I get stuck in I am not the executor. So then they do kind of dwindle. So having that support of or accountability is where I'm really living and needing. Because I was stuck in 3 years ago in the ducks have to be in a row, everything has to be perfect. And I've kind of moved past that a little bit, but still cannot like flip the switch per se, stay consistent with it. So that's definitely, I'm coming to terms with it's okay. We have to have dreamers and we have to have action people, and that I'm okay to be a dreamer now and not beat myself up, but I still have to take the action to get to where I want to go next.
Yes. Oh, I mean, show of hands, who feels like the idea person who struggles to execute, right? I think a lot of us have moments of that, even if we are maybe always in that camp, right? I am the queen, like that is my domain. I have a castle in that place, even though she's my partner in the podcast, right? And so I feel that so deeply. And what I want to speak to is when we are in that engine revving place, what is happening is that perfectionism is running your business every single time. When you are in that place with ideas and like a generative, like something's moving, something's coming, and then kind of failure to launch, you know, Rochelle said you're like the car slamming into this brick wall, which always reminds me of that scene from Austin Powers when he's like driving back and forth in the same spot. When you if and when you find yourself in that place, I would like to invite you to recognize that that is perfectionism in action. One of the things that's gorgeous when we start seeing that our behaviors or our patterns or our loops are pointing actually to pretty specific things, we can start to figure out how to take care of ourselves. So an example that I give is that I sometimes have anemia, and I will notice because I'm suddenly exhausted all the time, and I get these like big bags under my eyes, and like, right, like there's like things that my body will do that are my body is signaling to me, hey, go take that iron supplement. Hey, go drink a spinach smoothie for breakfast, right? And our heart and our businesses and our creative processes are actually acting in this exact same way. We just need to learn the language, right? And the problem is that we've been given this model of self-rejection. We've been given this model of kind of linear capitalist action. And so we are divested from that language, right? And so because we are so baked in thinking that we are wrong or thinking that we are doing something wrong, we can't actually see the kind of wisdom or call or need in some of these patterns that play out. So then we're just stuck looping on them over and over and over again, right? So the first thing that I want to offer is that if and when you find yourself in that engine revving place, and you are wanting to take action and also you're failing to take action, you're being a perfectionist. And you might not be like a perfectionist all the time in all parts of you, because we are made of many, many parts. But in that moment, the part of you who's in the driver's seat of your business is a perfectionist, right? And Shavite is sharing perfectionism, and I have no flexibility, no space for allowing creative flow. It's like choking myself because I need to go according to a plan, and I'm killing off my creativity and possibility and the different perspectives for creating. Yes, exactly. Nailed it, right? So, and we're going to actually touch on a couple different like kind of gremlins who might be in the driver's seat of your business. So if you're watching this and this isn't relevant to you in this moment, don't worry, I got a couple more. But if you are in this moment experiencing some kind of engine revving energy, here's the question I want you to ask yourself. Maybe even close your eyes and drop into your heart center a little bit, because the best answers come from our body and not our mind. What happens if you fuck up? Breathe into the space of screwing up. Watch your body and emotional response to the possibility of it all going up in flames. Give yourself permission to make safe the thing you are afraid of. And we do that by seeing it. If it catches on fire, who stands on the other side? Are they still loved? There's no wrong answers to this. This is a practice of witnessing. Rochelle shares fear of embarrassment and shame. That's what holds me back. Oh, yes. Thank you for seeing that so clearly. Rachel says fear of rejection, the I told you so narrative, being without, so unsafe, right? Emotionally rejected both interpersonally and financially. Elizabeth, so beautiful. I'm not going to make it. I'm going to die. Jean says, I don't know, because on the other side, I live on the sidewalk alone in a refrigerator box of my shame. Look, apparently we're all in our shame boxes together on the other side of this. So maybe we can actually have a great time. But I see you. Shame, disappointment, the unknown. Okay. So these are exquisite shares. Think disappointment in myself, shame, narratives from family systems. So what I want to offer, if we go back to kind of manifestation culture and how it can't really help us through some of this stuff, like you're touching into big things, right? Elizabeth said, I'm going to die. Shame actually feels like dying. Right? When you actually fall all the way down in, shame feels like dying because it is the emotional intensity of being ripped away from emotional and material safety, right? So these are complex things. And I think that the thing that I really want to gift you is, if you are in engine revving and you're being a perfectionist, and then you just beat yourself up for being a perfectionist, you're not getting to you're not making the shame any safer, right? You're not making the like deep anxiety around rejection and safety safer by saying like, get the fuck over it already, right? What we need to break out of the same patterns that we are stuck in is a different kind of language, a different kind of map, right? The map that got us here, the playbook that got us here keeps us here, right? And basically, the reason that we're stuck in a perfectionist loop, or whatever your loop might be, again, we're going to get to some others, if ever you're stuck in a perfectionist loop, the core of it is this like real pain around internalized unkindness. So when we are then unkind to ourselves on top of it, we're just kind of compounding it, right? Nothing can shift, nothing can evolve. And so this practice of self-love as a business practice is actually the only thing that makes things new and different. Otherwise, we just keep being in the same painful place over and over and over again. The outside can change, The material reality might change, right? And also, we just are here always. And here, I mean, it's beautiful, and also there's pain here, right? I'm going to pause for questions or thoughts that are popping up for folks. You can come off mute if you have a question too. No? Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Jean.
All I was going to say is that I find it as if shame weren't isolating enough all by itself. But when people's well-meaning help can sometimes make it worse. And I have somebody who I adore and who adores me, who asks me regularly, but is it worth it? Just, is it worth what you're doing? And it's like, I can't even, of course, no, risking living, living in a refrigerator box. No, that's not worth it. But then there's this other piece that I can't explain. I have to do this differently. I can't just drop, you know what I mean? I can't just drop it. But anyhow, it doesn't, there's no place in me. It's even more isolating because there's no place in me for anything to land, even if it's well-meaning, and especially if it's not coming from where I'm coming from, which is what you're describing, the self-love place, right? Because get over it, is it worth it, is all over there.
Thank you for speaking to that. Anyone else have these moments where there's people you go to about this stuff and you're just like, that was not helpful, right? What often happens is collectively and individually, we have been given models that are oriented around fixing, right? You know the moment, even if you put the business stuff to the side, where you sit down with someone and you're heartbroken or you're sad or you're scared and they immediately start trying to fix your problem. Does it help? Or do you just feel annoyed, right? Probably when you're in that hot, big emotions thing, and then someone comes in and is just trying to talk you out of it or make it better or smooth it over, right? You're experiencing rejection. You're like, no. I'm sad. I'm scared. Don't talk me out of my fear because talking ourselves out of things doesn't work. And so this is the other reason why kind of toxic manifestation culture really grates on me, because you can't talk yourself out of how you feel. You can gaslight yourself, you can reject yourself, but you can't actually talk yourself out of being afraid. You can love yourself through fear, right? We can alchemize our fear, but we can't convince logic our way out of an emotional state, right? Especially when the language is stop feeling that way, knock it off, right? There are logic tools we can use to bring in compassion and shift our state, but we can't talk ourselves out of it with that kind of knock it off already energy, right? And again, most of you were given the knock it off already language as the template, right? Because unfortunately, your parents, your caretakers, that was probably the language and the model that they had, right? So I also want to acknowledge the incredible courageousness of what you are doing, because it's a big deal to go out and create a business for yourself, right? To say, I am declaring that my financial material safety I get to create on my own terms, that I get freedom and financial resources, that I get to be free and taken care of at the same time. That's a huge deal. And then on top of it, to create for yourself and actively build for yourself an emotional narrative of care that you weren't given. Was two giant brand new things that have not previously existed in the world that you are birthing. So maybe give yourself some credit if it didn't happen, if you don't have your 7 figures in 3 months, right? Overcoming generational, emotional, and financial neglect. Yeah, you're a curse breaker, Elizabeth, right? These are, you are a curse breaker. You are standing in the flow of time saying, no, I'm creating new. I'm creating new for me and anyone who may come after me, right? Whether they carry my DNA or they just walk on the earth with me, right? Same, right? So I want to invite you to see that you are standing in a place of bigness, because because we have been taught that these complicated emotions are wrong and bad and too much, when they show up, we often then immediately create a narrative that we're small, right? Like sadness can make us feel small, or anger, or shame, right? And so what I would offer is that, like, these things are big because you are big and you are standing big, even as it feels nuanced and complicated. Does that make sense? Yeah. Where do I want to go next? Okay, so that's our perfectionist, right? We have our perfectionist who's potentially running the show. And what I want to invite you to see is that your business has a board of directors. All of our businesses do, right? We're a little more corporate than we think we are. And your board of directors are the different parts of you, right? And there's a different political game going, like any board of directors, like any group, right? So what I want to invite you to see is to start kind of making a mental map of the board of directors on your business and who are the power brokers, because maybe we can start to shift who's actually running the show, right? So, in your mind's eye, cast the picture of the boardroom, right? Like mine has lots of cozy couches, like we are lounging, right? There's big windows, like cast your image. What does your like leadership suite look like in your mind's eye? And we're going to start placing characters in to this room, right? So you've got your perfectionist. Let's name them. Let's label them. Let's understand them. Now, the root of this, if you're not familiar with parts work, is just this idea that there's no one singularly defined self. We are all made up of multiple parts, and at any given moment, those parts are interplaying with each other, right? And also are at different places they get triggered, and so one part will show up louder than the other, right? So for example, you have this big creative idea, you're scribbling all over the notebooks, right? You've got all these big ideas, you're in the shower, everything is possible. You step out and go live or birth it out into the world, and your perfectionist comes like roaring up, right? Because they are triggered and they are trying to keep you safe, right? So we want to notice the different parts that are running our business, and then we want to begin to be able to notice who's stepping into a leadership role at any given moment, because we want to start to be more intentional about who we're letting run the show, right? So Rochelle says, who are the power brokers? The ones with the loudest voices. Exactly. And what I want us to start thinking about is, who are we giving the microphone to, right? So we have our perfectionist. What's the next question? I want to ask this next question. Okay, I want to invite somebody to drop in the chat. What's something else that feels like struggle in your business right now? I want us to like pick out some of the other power brokers that might be showing up. I've got a list, but I'm curious to hear from y'all. Where there might be like, where is there like a stuck emotion that's showing up? And if not, I can just.
I think there's a slacker in the room. It's the one that loves the idea, but it hesitates. Well, I don't know. Sorry. A half-cooked thought there.
Yeah. Okay. So Rochelle's speaking to this part that feels like they're like, no, man, like that's a cool idea, but we're just gonna like hang over here and like binge Netflix. Great. Love it. I would offer that that's perhaps your disassociative self, right? Well, actually, I would offer this two things. I would offer that is two things going on at once, right? Perhaps a disassociative self who's like, nah, we can just be small. It's fine. No big deal. And I would offer that might also be the part of you at the exact same time. That might also be the part of you who knows hustle isn't required, right? And is actively pushing you to create a business that is rooted in more ease and more play and more permission to binge Netflix, right? Like that gets to be part of your life if you enjoy that. So I want to offer like a combo, right? That any one of these parts has wisdom to offer and has an anxiety that they are protecting, right? So our perfectionist self, to return to them, our perfectionist self, their kind of their handicap or their weakness is that they cause the like slam on the brakes, wall comes down, action doesn't move forward. There's something in there though that is speaking to like potentially your deep reverence for the work that you're making in the world and your big desire for it to be beautiful, right? And so how can we create the desire for the work to be beautiful while giving it permission to be messy? Okay, Devante says, yes, I just appreciate the comment about not letting people, got a newbie, hold on. I appreciate the comment about not letting people talk us out of the big complicated emotions. Remind me of Nietzsche said, be careful when you cast out your reminds that you don't throw away the best parts of yourself, the gods of yourself. Ugh. Thank you. Yes, I've been really feeling a tug towards Nietzsche lately. So I thank you for bringing that in, right? I really don't like when people try to talk me out of my confusion. Yes. My confusion definitely belongs in the fancy boardroom because working with him, I always check back in with my mission and values. It helps me ensure my work is truly value driven. Oh, cast out your demons. Okay, so I'm going to reread the phrase. Be careful when you cast out your demons that you don't throw away the best parts of yourself, the gods of yourself. Oh my God, I love that quote so much because that's really actually the heart of this work, is that the things that we are thinking are demons are our God. That is our God self, right? And it's when we have all of these parts of ourselves in tandem and internalized and integrated that we have greater and greater access to our God self, who moves, like takes giant, messy, imperfect, exquisite steps, right? Okay, so we have slacker, we've got confusion, we've got a procrastinator. Eva, you've moved locations. Oh, validate. We've got
and I'm smoking a cigarette. But I want to jump in. I feel like the other one that I have is the like I can't do it, like a small little scared voice. It's the like lack of self-efficacy piece.
Oh, yes. Anyone else know the like, no, I can't. Show of hands.
Or even imposter, then that like evolves into imposter syndrome. That's a fun one.
Oh, yes. Okay. So yes. Okay. The I can't is gorgeous because the emotion that I would tie into the I can't is the emotion of despair, right? Just that feeling of like nothing is possible. And what I want to offer you is that despair is protecting you. The I can't is protecting you, right? So all of these patterns that show up, one of the key ways that we integrate them is to recognize what their need is, right? Like thinking of my 4-year-old who has big emotions, right? Like she was like crying about something, and like part of the journey of figuring out how to help her is figuring out what she's actually crying about, right? We can't help her if we don't understand what her need is, right? So if you're seeking to integrate your boardroom, integrate these monsters, one of the key questions to shift out of self-rejection into self-love is, what do you need, right? This I can't voice. Because again, most of us have the I can't voice, which might be a varying levels of who do you think you are, to you're a dummy, to this is too much work, to right, whatever you're like, whatever your I can't framework might look like. Nobody will want that. I would invite you, again, the practice is recognize the voice, recognize the part it is associated with, and begin to ask, what do you need? What are you scared of? And what do you have to offer, right? So in the part of this despair, I can't voice, nothing is possible, there is a deep desire to protect you, right? So I would offer, actually, if you want to drop in, because it's going to be more potent when it comes from you instead of me, if you have access to the I can't voice, first question, what do they feel like?
Are you asking me? Because
I'm asking everybody, but you can answer.
But I can
I
answer.
was gonna pick on you to tell us.
I have an answer. I mean, it shows up in different flavors. There's like a sadness. There's also it's actually very nuanced. There's a sadness. There's also like a victim, And then the victim loves to kick and scream. It's like the petulant child that I've heard you talk about. She's just like, I mean, it really does come from victimness, but like, she's like kicking and screaming.
Okay. Anyone else relate to where they feel into the I can't voice, when they touch into despair, this like victim energy comes up? Does that relate to anybody else? Yeah. Okay. Anyone else feel like there's a kicking and screaming energy there? For me, she doesn't kick and scream. For me, she's just like, nobody loves me. I'm the worst. Nothing is possible. Like, she's just like a wet fucking blanket laying on the like cold floor, right? Like the bed is right next to her and she's choosing to lay on the floor. That's my I can't voice for context. So they get to be different, right? So if one, they're not, this isn't a monolith. Okay, what I want to offer is that our subconscious, which is formed when we're like 5 years old, creates all these weird, illogical rules of how the world works, right? And then as adults, we're still running on that operating system, and then we're baffled by them all the time because they don't make sense, right? Which is another reason why we can't logic our way out of creating change in this kind of deep subterranean area of our heart, because it's not a place of logic. It's the place of the logic that a 4-year-old created to try to make sense of potentially really scary or unsettling environments, right? So despair shows up to tell you that you can't do something. Despair shows up to tell you that you're a victim. In the irony of ironies, that is because that part of you thinks that if you're a victim, you might get what you need. Right? By telling you cannot actually have what you want, by telling you stop even trying because it's impossible, they're rooting you into victim energy, because the subconscious believes, but if I'm a victim, then someone will come along and save me. And so ironically, you are trying to give yourself what you need, which is care, by convincing yourself that you cannot actually have any care. Do you see how like fucked up and fascinating this is?
Yeah, I just gotta say, like, bingo. Like, that is so it for me.
Yeah. Does anyone else relate to that? I mean, like, I realized that we just did like 7 layers in one smushed together, so your head might be spinning, especially if this context is new to you. He was saying yes. I feel seen and I kind of want to puke. Jean, I love you so much. I mean, that's not an uncommon reaction. I just, again, for context, even I had a long chat last night and she similarly like magicked me, and I like pretended to close the computer and hid under my blankets because I felt so seen in such a like actively, oh God, kind of way. So yes. So, okay, people are resonating with this. So then the gift you get to give yourself is actively connecting to your victim self and asking what they need. Which again will be different for everybody. To list some kind of practical tools for this practice, aside from coming and being part of the group program that will do this all the time. It's called the Business Incubator. We'll get there in a minute. But some practical tools. If you are a language person, if you like journaling, it can be a really exquisite practice to actually journal with these parts of yourself, right? And I will open up my notebook and literally like write as if I'm writing as if I'm writing a script, and I will write victim, and then I will let her talk, and then I will write me, which is ironic because right, I'm also the victim. But I'll ask her questions, and I will literally kind of drop in. Sometimes it helps take a few centering breaths first, and I will drop in and I will write a dialogue to understand and unpack these parts of myself. And that can be especially helpful if the emotions are like really gnarly, because some of these feelings are hard, right? Like, especially if shame's coming up, we will do almost anything to avoid feeling shame because it's so uncomfortable, because it actively feels like a kind of dying. So when the emotions are big, I find giving my mind a project, right, and creating some kind of linear confines to the practice can help me kind of like move through it and stay in it a little bit. Oh, my I can't person wants a buddy, of course. Yeah, your I can't person wants companionship. Shavite says having a practice to engage with the witness itself or the loving adult can help with these dialogues. Oh, yes, so that's the other thing. Yes, having a person to actually like practice this with and talk this through, gorgeous. The somatics, right, of actually dropping down into your body and your heart instead of looking at it from your mind is another really big thing, because again, the subconscious does not live in the mind. It lives in the body. It lives in these deeper emotions, right? And so when we try to tend to the mind, we try to solve the problem from the mind. It's just the wrong tool, right? Anyone else have anything they want to share when if they did connect to their victim self and have a clarity of what it is that they're looking for? You don't have to share. I just want to hold. Yeah, go ahead, Eva.
Here with no one else. Okay, so like so much came through. It was so awesome. It was I think it wanted, well, you kind of spoke to it a little bit, this embodied sense of encouragement. So honestly, I think every time that I'm feeling that victim consciousness and I'm like, I can't do it, blah, 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 it really comes back to the self-love piece about, okay, how can I get that encouragement, not from an external source, but from myself? And then I realized, but it doesn't feel lasting if it's just language. I'm just like, you can do it, which is helpful too, right? There's such thing as like positive affirmations, but it's like, for me, it's like the grounded sense of coming back into my body and remembering a truth that's, as you would say, you know, beneath language. That just feels like love. And I think what's so helpful about that for me is that it's reminding me like, oh, for me, my practice is always going to come back to a sense of like presence and being in my body and dropping in. It's not going to be the positive, you know, like self, like the, you know, like the self-help new agey type stuff that doesn't last for me.
Yes, I mean, same, right? That's that's how I feel. Like it can feel surface level for me when I have when there's this like deep hungry there's this deep hunger, Elizabeth saying there's this deep hunger for feeling seen and heard, right? This deep hunger to be witnessed, to pull out that one, which I relate to very much so. And then when I give myself kind of surface level affirmations, it can often for me feel dissonant. I know some people get tremendous impact out of them, and so I'm not poo-pooing the practice, but if it doesn't work for you, maybe it's just not the right tool for you, right? And that gets to be okay. I think a practice that does show up for me sometimes is if I do drop deep enough down to touch, right, to touch the thing under the thing, which I think many of us have done here today. I might then rise back up to the surface with a key phrase that is like an anchor and a gift back, right? Because I've gone all the way down, I felt the deep hunger, and then I've kind of traveled back up with something very specific. And in that case, I might make myself kind of a mantra or a phrase, but it's rooted in actually having seen myself, right? And so, you know, if I were Elizabeth, without knowing too specifically, but I might, you know, put my hand on my heart and offer like, it's safe to be seen, right? Like, I am loved, whatever the phrase might be, but it would I am loved exactly as I am might be a phrase that I would pull up based on my own journey with wanting to be witnessed, right? But it has resonance because I've gone all the way down rather than wallpapered over. Does that make sense? Does that resonate for folks? So if you have touched in and you want to write down you know, a phrase, feel free to anchor it in. And also if there isn't one, no worries. Okay. I'm going to pause. Questions, thoughts, ahas, frustrations. It's all welcome. Yeah.
I think it just, oh, sorry. Did I?
No, Elizabeth, and then she's like, perfect.
Oh, okay. Oh, I was just going to say, it's kind of unlocked a generational component of this, because I'm just thinking of kind of the cliche or phrase like turning a blind eye, and just like having had that done generationally, you know, turning a blind eye to problems, or even just for the sake of survival. You know, people have had to ignore really important emotional, psychological, developmental things to, like, you know, work in a mine, or, you know, but I think, you know, that gets transferred down, you know, and each generation gains more awareness, right? But I think we're all trying to reach a new level of awareness. And I'm sorry for the buzzing in the background, so I'll stop talking.
Oh, thank you so much for that share. I have shared this story before, so forgive me if you've heard it, but I love what you're saying, both the generational trauma of, right, like turning a blind eye, and also the way in which, like, that is a requirement. Right? That is a requirement. That is a survival tactic. And all of our things that we do that are acts of cruelty towards ourselves, or that, like, you know, broader scope, they are all misguided acts of love. Right? I would really like to invite you to see that every single thing that you do is an attempt at self-preservation. There is no such thing as self-sabotage. It does not exist. It does not exist. Every single thing that you do is an effort to keep you safe. Every single thing that you do is an attempt to get where you are trying to go, to create for yourself experiences of care and safety and love, right? We have some junky tools because of the world that we live in, our personal experiences, the legacy and generations behind us, right? And also, everything is an effort to create for ourselves safety and love and care. And so we can bring tremendous compassion to these practices, these like habits that might ultimately not be that compassionate, right? Because compassion and curiosity helps us to create new, where judgment will keep us stuck, right? The story I was going to share is this happened, I think it was a couple years ago now, but a really good friend of mine kept offering for me, like, the practice you need right now is gratitude. And it wasn't offered in a like spiritual gaslighty kind of way, but she was sort of like, you like, if you want to feel better about this situation, like, you got to figure out a way to feel grateful in it, right? And I kept trying, but it felt shallow, it felt hollow, right? And I'm generally like a pretty, like, gratitude and optimism run naturally for me, so it's not, it wasn't too much of a stretch, but also there was just something that, it was like an insubstantial experience, right? So it didn't feel like, kind of what Eva was saying, like, it didn't feel like it was shifting things for me. It just felt like I was kind of performing something. And so one day I was in, I kind of brought this question into meditation journey, and what I saw was this long line of my ancestors. So I'm Irish American. My ancestors came here from the potato famine. So there's this long line of ancestors that were like, we're fucking bitter. like we are hungry, we are exhausted, we have worked ourselves to the bone for nothing. Like, we are angry and bitter and resentful. Like, we do not have gratitude, we have anger and suffering. Right? And what was really incredible was that I sat there and I watched, and in my mind's eye, it was like, it stretched this like long lineage of suffering and of resentment for that suffering. And what happened in that moment is that it cracked open and gratitude showed up, right? In witnessing. So here we're talking a lot about kind of subconscious and parts, but we also then get to step into the place of ancestry and do this exact same practice, right? Which is that my ancestors didn't have access to gratitude because they were trying to fucking survive, right? And they were angry and they had reasons to feel angry. And so when I gave them the gift of seeing that resentment and the reasons why that resentment was actually like a beautiful act of preservation, then I no longer needed to carry it for all of us. And I could actually like feel the gratitude that like showed up and flowed through me, right? So thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing the lens of ancestry and how that's weaving through. Devante's saying, I had a similar experience with bitterness in my ancestry. Exploring it is super, super life-changing. Yeah, it's I'm getting teared up thinking about it again. Maybe they're like, why do you come back and talk to us again then, huh? Because gratitude has been challenging for me to to tap into. Yes. So if this is another gift. Okay, we're kind of like zigging and zagging, but if there's an emotional state that you want and you're not experiencing it, one of the beautiful things that practices you can invite in is like, okay, well, why like if you want gratitude and you're feeling bitter, like what's in the bitterness? Go to the bitterness, right? Go to the thing that you think you don't want anymore and ask yourself, what's here for me? What is here for me? Wisdom, medicine, what wants to be witnessed? What has something to, if your bitterness is hanging around, it wants to give you something. So let it like be in intimate dialogue with this part of yourself. And Jean says, seeing my ancestors' resentment also made me grateful for their resilience. Oh yeah, absolutely. Right. Because then I also had access to this part of me that was like, oh, right. And also like, I come from a long line of people who have figured out just how to survive and have done courageous things. And also I don't have to focus on surviving. I can now focus on thriving. That can be my gift to our legacy. Right. Okay. We're zigging and we're zagging, but I want to pause. Questions, thoughts, ahas? So if anyone is watching this and they're like, great, I love all of this, and then what the fuck does it have to do with business? We can talk about that, shall we? I mean, we touched on it a little bit around the perfectionism, but look, so we spent a little bit of time here touching into, bye, Devante, we'll see you later. The replay will go out if you're interested in the last half or the last half hour. If you, what's I gonna say? Oh, okay. So our behaviors are driven largely by our subconscious, right? The actions that are available to us are like, they rise up. They're not top down, right? This is the thing that's silly. We think that we think something, and then the thinking causes an action, and the action causes a feeling, but it's actually completely the opposite, right? Our subconscious drives our behavior, and it drives what thoughts are available to us, right? And so as we tend to these deeper parts of ourselves, we rewire and reweave what actions are available and what and how we might be thinking about and narrating our life and our business. So for example, a couple people here have spoken about being seen, right? And the hunger to be seen. If you have a core tenderness, I use that word often instead of wound because I try to shift away from language of fixing and seeking to these tendernesses as problems, because I really do think that they are places of tremendous compassion and wisdom. That's just my language. So if you touch into, if you carry a tremendous tenderness around being seen, what things might be hard for you in a business? Going live, being seen, putting a picture of yourself up there, showing up consistently, making the more vulnerable offer, right? Doing the bigger, bolder version, right? We all have versions where it's like, oh, there's like a soft, like milk toasty version of my work. And then there's the like scary, uncomfortable, more impactful version, right? If you're afraid to be seen, you're probably going to choose milk toast, right? Which again, everything is an act of self-care. So we don't need to make that wrong, but you're probably going to have more fun and make more money and have a bigger impact the more you can shift away from the safe version of your work to the big version of your work, right? So if you carry these core tendernesses around being seen, then we're hooked into our business to validate, to fill that hole, right? If we carry a little hole around being seen, and then we bring that into our business, we either don't want to show up because we're terrified, or we're really hooked into our business to like, give me more, let me be seen, right? Both of them fail to give us what we actually want, and both of them are actually rooted in this like kind of cloaking device, right? And so when we treat our business from this bottom-up approach, what ends up happening is you integrate the part of yourself who's afraid to be seen, and then guess what? It's not so hard to be consistent. you integrate the part. There's a lot that happens in consistency. I could give a whole like 3-month course just on consistency. Maybe one day I will. I got a lot to say on it, but it's when you tend from the bottom up, you feel comfortable going live. You feel less hooked in to the validation because you see because it's available to you to see yourself, right? And therefore then the bolder version of your medicine gets to show up with greater ease because you're not trying to prove and make safe, right? Does this make sense? So the goal here is not perfection, because this project of integrating all these parts of ourselves, I truly believe, is an infinite project. And also, one of my clients once said that my tagline should be business coaching for people who wanted to effing work already, right? Because when you're in that place of like, I just keep going and nothing's changing. When that is what's happening, it's because these deeper parts of ourselves are running the show and they're hungry to be seen. And as we see them, then we start to make shifts, and then things show up differently because we're not afraid to be seen, or et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense? So similarly, we tend to the part of ourselves who's a perfectionist. We integrate that wound or those tender parts or that rejected self. We bring that in. We get to take messy action. We get off the starting block. We move forward. We take big strides because we're not actually scared that everything's going to fall apart, because we carry a insulation that I'm fine even if it does. No big deal, right? Does that make sense? So the work here in this conversation is a lot of like looking at the deep and rising back up. Sorry, just gone by very quickly. But then the other thing that's really beautiful, and this is where we're going to go tomorrow. So today we've looked at kind of where our tender gremlins are. What we'll do tomorrow is look at how, as we integrate our gremlins or our rejected selves, we also get clarity of what our desire is, and we get to hear the strong inner voice of possibility with clarity, and how that can shape and impact the course of our work, the words we want to speak, the messaging we create, the sales strategy we put together that feels empowered and aligned, right? So the project is kind of going into the muck and then actively building off of desire, and then going into the muck and then actively building out of desire and intuition and the like magic of our own heart, right? And it's a weaving of these two. So where we'll go tomorrow is to look at how to spend some time in the building, in the action taking, and how to create the clarity of what it is that you even want to be building and how you want to be building it. Does that make sense? Does anyone have questions? Oh, so Elizabeth and Rachel have both shared that this has meant a lot. They'll be here tomorrow. I'm super jazzed. So the thing that I will offer is that, as I mentioned briefly, all of this workshop is woven in as promotion for a program I run. Jean's in it, called Elsa's in it, called sorry. Shayna's also in it. My chat box was over her box. I don't mean to leave you out, pal. Which is a 6-month journey that looks at exactly this, right? The unweaving, the unpacking of the deeper infrastructure, and then also the building and the action taking and the weaving of the two. So if this resonates with you, if this feels like the kind of business coaching medicine that you're looking for, that's what I run. It's really super potent and a lot of fun. And I would love to chat with you about how it may or may not be a good fit. So when I send out the replay email, I'll send the link with some information. We can jump on a consult call, all of those things. I can talk about it a little bit more tomorrow, but context that if this speaks to you and you are ready to go deeper and get more, the Business Incubator is the place to go for that. Questions about that? Okay. There's the last thing I wanted to go, place I wanted to go for us before we bounce. You started this call by setting an intention. And I want to invite you to take a moment, maybe put your hand on your heart. Give yourself permission to let things move and change. We create these spaces where we evolve, and a lot of us can make these really big inner shifts, and we create for ourselves sometimes some resistance around external change because we're seeking safety. So I just want to offer the practice of breathing in, that you have received and created for yourself some big medicine, and that to breathe in for yourself that there is space and permission for external and internal to change, and that you get to walk safely through those changes. If you want to talk more, I'm here. You can find me on, message me on any of the social media stuff about things that are popping up for you. I'm happy to hear from you. If you have questions, before we start tomorrow, I would love to weave them into what we make tomorrow. My plans are always loosey-goosey because we make bigger magic once you all show up with your wisdom. Thank you. This has been exceptional. You guys are truly, truly, truly incredible. Anything, as my former mentor used to say, anything anyone feels the need to say to feel complete. Someone wants to say to feel complete? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Talk to you tomorrow.
This was amazing. Thank you.
Love you.
Bye, everyone.